Hello everyone, welcome back to the Waterstones vlog. It's Will here. I'm back in my slightly subterranean bunker to talk to you about a book. Apologies if I look tired, it's because I actually stayed up last night to finish this book. It's because I found it very compelling and also very upsetting, and it actually made me quite angry as well, which is why I felt the need to sort of continue and finish it. And I'm really glad I did, because it means I get to talk to you about it today. This is the book. It is called Cuz. By Danielle Allen. There's actually a subtitle there, The Life and Times of Michael A, because it is about her cousin, Michael Allen. That subtitle might remind you of another book, The Life and Times of Michael K, by the Man Booker Prize winner J.M. Coetzee. There is actually a quote from Coetzee on the front of this book, and it says, "Devastating." That's actually taken from a longer quote, which is on the back of the book, but obviously a very high pedigree of fan of this book and an indication of just how strong it is. I'll talk about that quote a little bit later. But as I said, I felt compelled to finish the book last night, and I also felt compelled to pick it up in the first place because I could see on my proof that there were this sort of a series of stats basically detailing the short life of Michael Allen. He was arrested when he was just 15 after an attempted carjacking that went wrong, and in fact he had committed a couple of other robberies in the week leading up to that. And because he was convicted of all three at the same time, and because a law had just been introduced, the 3 strikes law, which meant that if you're convicted of the same crime 3 times, you got a much harsher sentence, he ended up being sentenced as an adult, first of all. He was only 15 when he was arrested. And he was sentenced to 12 years and 8 months in prison, which is extraordinary when you are only 15. He was released in 2006. He went back into prison in 2007, released again in 2008. When he was finally clear of all his parole, that was June in 2009. A month later, he was shot and killed. And that did not seem to me to be much of a life for somebody, and so I wanted to understand what had happened to Michael for that to happen to him, and how a black man in America could have such a short life, spend so much of it in prison, and to end up being shot. So that's why I wanted to read the book. As I said, it's written by his cousin Danielle Allen, who is an academic, and she manages to do several things in one book. She has the personal insight to really connect you with Michael as a person, and the familial insight because of being part of the family. She also has an academic's eye to be able to give you a better idea about the social and economic background to his life, but also to the life of any black man in America in this period. And she's also able to sort of, I don't know, to draw some slightly wider conclusions about things, which is very surprising given that she's obviously dealing with something very, very personal. And this is all part of the process of seeing a series of stats like that, and obviously not wanting to reduce somebody's life to statistics, but to draw it out and to discover so much more about him as a person. And I got very upset towards the end because it was actually, as the book goes on, she goes back to his early life, to his childhood. And there is, of course, that thing. She shows some photographs in the book, and hopefully I'll be able to flash a few of those up as I'm talking. You see this child with so much promise, and you see this young man with this extraordinary beaming smile, and you just think, how could things have gone so wrong for him? And there are some answers to that in the book. There are obviously lots of questions too. And Coetzee, in his quote, the more fulsome quote, says that the great thing about this book is that it starts off as a personal memoir, but it also really looks at the war on drugs in America and how that has failed people and how it has condemned so many men to a life of incarceration. I saw a statistic that said that 25% of all the people in prison in the world are imprisoned in America. 25% of everyone in prison in the world is in one country, which is frankly shocking. And huge numbers are to do with this war on drugs, which is not successfully combating drugs, it is just simply locking lots of people up. Michael is a complex figure. He is not flawless, of course, and he is not blameless. But I think it's hard not to read a book like this and to feel that it is not fair for somebody to have had such a short childhood, to have been forced into an adulthood spent entirely in prison, and to have been sort of cut short just when it looked like he might be about to embark on a life of freedom, which all makes it very upsetting. So A very powerful book. I really recommend it. It gives you great insight into the fact that simply by being born black in America, you are facing huge obstacles in your life, and the pitfalls are many. And Michael was unlucky enough to fall into several of those along the way. And great, as I say, great insight from Danielle and her writing, managing to meld sort of the slightly more detached academic look at things, but also the very, very close personal attachment she has to Michael. And then towards the end of the book, it becomes really a call to change something about society, which was the thing that really sort of spurred me on to finish the book in the early hours of this morning, because it's very moving. So I would really heartily recommend Cuz, which is by Danielle Allen. So there we go. You'll be joined next week by another of our vloggers with another book. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about that one. Links and all the stuff that you need to know about it will be in the description below. But I will see you in a month's time, where we may be getting slightly more festive. See you then. Take care.